And one. Hello,
Hello.
you guys, and welcome to.
The Ladies Still podcast.
Oh, are we doing another? Oh, right. No, we're supposed to do another Ladies Tale podcast.
Oh my goodness,
Okay,
really?
so
We doing
we have
no.
4 podcasts, and so it gets a little
Creators
confusing.
are going to create. Like that's, I guess,
Yeah, that's what
you
happened.
left us in, what is it, like 8, 9, 2 years, Like, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's pandemic time. So you're like, how many months, weeks, years? I don't know. Like,
I
what
think
is
we're
it?
doing a week for a year right now.
I don't know. Okay. So I have no
If
idea
you
what
live
is.
a full pandemic week, it's an entire year. So you're a whole lot older than you thought you are. You're
And,
like,
and then that means I am pulling it off nicely. Look at my skin. Because I think
really?
I'm like 90 years old at this point.
Ooh, I am one of the best
I'm
anecdotes I know. Oh, I will know that. Thank you for remembering to introduce us because I had completely slipped
High
my
power
mind.
social distance stuff.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Okay, we should probably try to get
So we do
semi-professional.
right. So we write literary life guides with pop poetry. I mean, some people might call them anthologies, but ew,
That's boring.
why? Literary life guides with pop poetry. And I thought divorce was bad with other life lessons, and I thought being grown up was easy. If only I were me. And I guess I'm gonna just talk about
The Women's Cave with pop poetry. It made it too.
and other pop poetry bestseller. But we also have another book that I dropped this today,
Oh my goodness,
which
it's
is I thought a thoughtful collection, a misfit guide. What is wrong with my
It
mom?
just dropped today. How are you supposed to remember the title?
I don't know.
You saw it like
so
3 hours ago.
Many titles.
More importantly, how did I not know about this new book?
Well,
Oh, is it the thing
because we just
decided to
kind
do?
of did this whole push another like last week. We're not gonna say, hey, and by the way, we have another book right now. Like that's terrible. Like, I mean, although y'all, if you want to pick it up, please do it. And you can find out everything your ladies are doing on www.andwethought.com. And our wonderful co-host has already started talking and telling us we should have been marketing our book. So wonderful co-host, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tanya Todd. I'm an author and actress from Las Vegas.
No, every
See,
time
it
she does
this
it, I'm like, it's so darn
concise.
short.
Because like, look, I feel like I should have her write my beginning. So in that way,
Then it would be actually scripted, and that would feel horrible.
it wouldn't feel horrible. Then I would say it and we'd be like, we're so professional and fool everyone.
It would be horrible because I would be reading it. Wait, I can't understand my handwriting.
But y'all are here to hear us drone on about our faults, I guess. You're here to hear from our wonderful guest. Wonderful guest, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm Ali Levine. I am a celebrity stylist, TV personality, lifestyle expert, podcaster, influencer, blogger. I wear many hats. And mama of 2.
Yeah.
Ooh,
That's
that
all.
last one seems like a lot.
That's all. Right.
It is.
On top of everything else that you do, you're like, and I'm a mama too. Thank you.
I don't know how I would be able
Yes.
to do it.
And I mean, in pandemic world, which means that your children are always home, that must be fun.
So we do have
Everything,
questions.
yeah.
Wait.
Well, Tanya, I know
should start
Tanya
with
had
Tanya having questions.
Tanya has
first.
wonderful questions. Tanya.
Yes, go ahead, Tanya. You can
And
start.
so many questions because of all the things that you do. I'm wondering, how do you find the time to cover so many topics on your blog? Like, let's just start with your blog. It's not just one blog, it's like a series of different topics. How do you cover so many topics in addition to all the other hats that you're wearing?
So, my blog was born almost like 8-9 years ago now. And at first it was just like, I took one topic that I was interested in within fashion. It was like, okay, let's do Trends Tuesday. Like I kind of coined that term. It wasn't really out there. And I was like, let's just do trends. Like, let's just talk. Because people come to me and say like, how, do you wear a trend? Or how do you know if a trend's for you? So I wanted to just talk about that and talk about like even my own struggles with like figuring out what trends work for me and what didn't. So at first it was like, that was like a one little series. And then I started getting like questions about men. So I was like, okay, Manic Monday for men, and it was all like the men and like their men's styles and so it just kind of became these different things. Then people were asking to be featured on my blog and I was so excited to share from people's styles. So then I started doing Friday Fashionista and Fashionista, and it kind of just grew and built, to be honest, organically, where it just kind of like the tiers, the different series kept happening. And then as my following grew, my community grew, I started figuring out like what other things people wanted to know about. Obviously then I was doing, TV segments and styling celebrities. So it was like, hey, here's this section, check out, you know, the different people I style and best dressed and how you get the look. And then here's this TV, right, you know, product I'm using, and this is why I love this. And so just kind of kept expanding. And you know, fast forward to now, to be honest, I'm actually rebranding right now. I'm hoping to be launched by either end of 2020 or early 2021, with just kind of like really taking all the series you're talking about and making it more concise for people to kind of feel like they have a little better idea of navigating, like, this is the fashion, this is mom life, you know, this is the TV stuff, and really bring that up. But to be honest, I love that you asked that question, because I didn't even realize how many series I really had until I kind of like started getting all this feedback from different people, like, wow, you do so many things and I'm so interested in all of it, but like, how do I, you know, find this, or how do I find that? And I even noticed, like, wow, to be honest, like my own brand kind of took over without me even like realizing it. You know, it was like I started in the fashion world, and, you know, all of a sudden, you know, I'm known as the it girl of, you know, of styling, you know, from New Ludo magazine, these all the others publications, and my clients are getting best dressed. And it was amazing, but it was kind of like, whoa, okay, this is happening. And then, you know, New York Times featured me on page 6 for my business and fashion tips. And so things just kind of took off. And so when things took off, to be honest, I was so creatively involved of doing like what was going on in front of me. I wasn't able to like reverse and go backwards and like, you know, tidy up things that were happening behind me that I needed to like share and still like, you know, put out there. So as I like went along, as I would backtrack, I would add different series. But now, fast forward to 2020, I'm able to like actually look at these like, you know, tedious things and say, okay, now's the time to like figure out how I really want this to lay out, because I do so many things. And to be honest, I don't have time for everything. Like, I know it's a terrible answer, but I think it's important, especially right now in 2020, to be real about that. Like, you know, I think we've all put so much pressure on ourselves. We all feel like we have to be on this autopilot all the time to be productive. And anything I've learned during this time is like, rest is just as productive as anything else. And like, rest is actually massively productive. Like last week, I was just having a really hard week and I just couldn't get anything done. I couldn't get in my creative brain. And I was like forcing myself and like spinning out of control, sitting there like, oh my gosh, I can't get this done. I can't get that done. And I was getting overwhelmed. And so I was like, that's it. I'm gonna go take a nap. I'm gonna go lay down. And I like started like going to sleep earlier and just like doing things that I don't normally do. I usually stay up when the baby sleeps and get my work done while she sleeps. And I was like, no, I'm just going to go to sleep. And I ended up like a few days later having so much more energy, but like my creative juices started all over again. I was like, oh, I wanted to work on this. Oh, I need to film this. Oh, I need to do this, you know, and all of a sudden everything was like flowing again. And I'm like, wow, rest is just seriously so important and so productive. And so I think that now that I'm working on my site and like figuring out how to rebrand it and what I'm doing with all the series, I'm kind of asking myself those same questions of like, how am I doing, you know, all this? And like, what are the things that people really want the most? Are there any things that I can kind of let, you know, it could still live there, but not update it necessarily with new content, because maybe it's not the most exciting for people right now? And really just being able to take my own life and you know, all the hats I wear and say, okay, all of this is part of my brand and part of Ali and Ali Levine. So, you know, what does that look like? So I'm really like working now and fine tuning, like, this is Ali Levine design. This is the fashion side, the styling side. This is all of this. Then this is Ali Levine. You know, this is like what I'm doing, you know, the blogging, the motherhood, the TV stuff, all of that. And then this is the podcast, everything with Ali Levine, you know, and kind of like make this umbrella so people can navigate all these different tiers and see that. And I can navigate it where I feel like, okay, I know, you know, more of what's going on. So it's like, I know it's a very raw answer, but I feel like, again, it's important to share, because I have so many entrepreneurs reach out to me every day and say, wow, you do so much. How do you get it all done? And my first answer is like, I don't get it all done. I'm always going back to my to-do list and like, you know, checking off one thing, like, yes, I got that done. And then there's like
I totally hear that.
We all in this room are hearing
yes,
that. Like, we
it
were
off,
all like,
you're
yes.
so excited. Yes, it's checked off. But then you have like 8 other things and you're like, oh, okay, I got to do this, I do that. And like yesterday, I got 1 thing done out of my list of 10. Today I've gotten 2. Let's see how far I get down the line between the girls and the house and, you know, everything else going on, you know? So it's like, I think you have to be really real with yourself. And I think 2020 has like kind of forced us all into that of being like, okay, I really only get 24 hours in a day. What am I choosing to do with that time? What am I doing to like not only work, but also like give back to myself, do right by myself, self-care, self-love, like all the things that we all like talk about. And it's like such a buzzword, but like, let's be real. I honestly, for me, I wasn't doing that. So I'm now like being really mindful of like allowing myself to meditate and not feeling guilty about it. And like journaling every day and doing different practices and taking a bath if I need to and want to relax and, just doing things that really going back to that rest, like allows us to be able to be productive again, but also to like check in with ourselves and say, hey, you know what? It's okay if I don't get everything done. I just, every day is a different day. And you have to look at it like, especially as an entrepreneur, it's like every day is a new day. And I look at it as like, this is a podcast day. This is a blog day. This is an Instagram day. Like I break it up and allow myself to know if I see other fires going on in the background, I no longer can react to them. The younger entrepreneur in me used to react to everything and I would jump to everything. I would handle this. I'd handle this.
I so hear that. It's one fire at a time.
Yeah, it is, right? It's one fire at a time, because when you go to jump to this and jump to that, all of a sudden now all the fires have been half put out and nothing is actually out and you're exhausted. And now it's like, oh, but I got maybe 10% of that done and then 20% of that done and nothing's done. So I've been really being like super mindful, especially now in 2020 and being a mom too, of being like, okay, I'm going to finish this task from beginning to end and then check off and know it's done and then move on to the next thing. Even if it kills me that I see I've got 100 text messages in the background, I've got DMs going on, whatever it is, like, nope, I got to stay to this priority, get this done, and then move forward. And like, look, we're only human. There's some days where I can't do that. And I'm like, oh, I have a million messages I have to answer. And I just like, I just like get in my DMs and I'm answering people. And the next thing I know, I look at my phone, it's 2 hours later and I'm like, oh my gosh, now I can't film that. It happens. But I think that, it's important just as entrepreneurs to be real about like, you can do it all, but you can't do it all at once. I think that's the
It's
case.
just really nice to hear someone else going through this.
Isn't it?
Like, wow, I'm not a total loser because I can't get it all done every day.
No, and like honestly, like I think that that's such an important thing to like drive in this is that 2020 has like shown all of us that like one, yes, work is so important. Yes, it's obviously our livelihood and all these things, but like really like during this time now, like what's truly important to us, like ourselves, our family, the people around us, like, we've learned like very heavily learned like what is important, what is of value and the things that really aren't. And work shouldn't define us. And I am so guilty of that. Like I always look at my career and I'm like, oh, this happened and then that happened. I got this and I got that. And I'm always looking for the next thing and the next thing to check off and, the next exciting, feature, whatever it is. And
you say that your work might define you, but you share your mom life on your blog and as a part of your whole Instagram life. I mean, what made you decide to share your mom life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, for those that don't know, when I had Amelia almost 2.5 years ago now, I went through pretty heavy postpartum depression. And so that was really, really hard for me and not expected, like at all. I'm a pretty like upbeat person and, I have a pretty like fun personality. So to be taken down that heavy and to feel like that dark and that vulnerable, especially being a celebrity stylist and someone in the public eye, it was really hard to like show up even just online, like being so raw and not being able to get my makeup on, not being able to get dressed because, I have a brand new baby and I'm breastfeeding and I ended up having a C-section I didn't expect. And, the list goes on. It was like, I had, cystic acne, like it was just so many things that I did not prepare for nor expect to have, but becoming a new mom in my mind, like I thought I would have her and, go back to set, take her to set with me, bounce back, all good and just get rolling. And the universe is like, hold on, that's not happening, and it was a really hard lesson for me because I like got taken out of everything and was having trouble, nursing in the beginning. And like I said, I broke out everywhere from cystic acne and had hormonal things going on. And my C-section took way longer to heal. I couldn't drive for 9 weeks. I mean, like the list just goes on. But because of all that, and because I did suffer from heavy postpartum depression, I felt it was important to start to share my own journey. It wasn't an easy decision. And when I first started sharing, I started losing like followers left and right, thousands. And I started having people like not listening to certain parts of my blog, like reading the motherhood stuff. I started watching my numbers kind of like dipping, and it was like, oh, okay, what did I just do? But something inside of me told me like I had to keep sharing and I had to keep going, because I was getting like little things here and there of like confirmation from women that were like, thank you for sharing that, even though it was so small. And I felt like, okay, there's a reason this is like on my heart, with whatever you believe, you know, God, the universe, your guides, whatever it may be, like something is telling you that you need, you know, to continue to share. And so I did. And then that's what my podcast was born out of. That was originally stripped down with Ali Levine. My show was to share that vulnerability and myself as a new mom, of how hard those struggles were, how much I felt like I lost myself and truly mourned the death of myself, and what that looked like for me. And when I started sharing that, I started having people reach out all over saying, thank you for sharing your story. You know, it helped me, or I didn't realize I had postpartum depression and now I'm going to get help, and all of these things. And I started realizing like I was healing because I was sharing. And so it was almost like, to be honest, in a way, like in the beginning, it was kind of like a selfish thing, like, oh, well, when I share, I feel like I feel better. So I'm going to continue to share. But then, like, as things happened more and more, my community grew and more people started reaching out. And I started actually realizing I was actually really helping people. And then I
So
felt
it
like,
wasn't really selfish. It was self-care that turned into being able to help others, right?
Selfless
right.
act. It became a
Yeah,
selfless
selfless.
act.
Right. But to me in the beginning, to be honest, like I didn't see it that way. To me in the beginning, I was just coming out of the dark and getting back into the light, and just was feeling somewhat normal and felt like, oh my gosh, okay, well, this is helping and this is working. Then whatever, I'll do it, you know, because I just wanted anything at that point to help me stay out of that. And then, like you said, I started helping others and people started reaching out, and stories from all over the world of what they were going through or what they had gone through. And even like older moms were like, thank you for sharing that. I could never voice what I was feeling back then because it wasn't, you know, of the norm. And,
Yeah, they
you know,
felt seen, right?
yeah, I was, which was incredible to me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just sharing my story. Like we all have stories, you know, and it was just like, I'm just sharing mine and what I felt and what I went through. And so, you know, from there and just seeing just that one thing, to be honest, it kind of just took off. My motherhood community rallied around me. I lost thousands of followers, but at the same time, I gained by the thousands of women and mothers that started following me and reading my blog. And because they were following me and asking me so many questions, I felt like I needed to show up, not just for myself, but for them. So I just started sharing more and more vulnerably of like, this is what's going on with breastfeeding, and this is what I'm having trouble with sleeping, and this is what's happening with this. And, you know, and just started really voicing like each thing that was hard for me as a new mom, you know. And fast forward now to being a mom of two, it's like all the things that I'm now sharing being a mom of two, and how, you know, it can be very intense, and, you know, all these things. Because I think that people look at social media, like even my Instagram, I try to be very raw, but like I know there's a lot of pretty pictures still. And I feel like people look at it and are like, oh my gosh, how does she do that? Or like, oh my gosh, I can't, you know, I can't do that. And I'm a mess and I'm this. And I know how that feels on the other side. Like I was there, you know, I was staring at my Instagram in my heavy postpartum depression going, look at all these moms and their bodies look perfect. And look at all the makeup they're wearing. And look how beautiful they look. And horrible, just comparison. And I was already drowning. And then social media was adding to that. And so once I came back, I felt like it was my, you know, in a way, my responsibility to be honest about what I had been through, and to also like really show up authentically, not just for me, but for others, to say, hey, I don't always look like this every day. I can't always get it together, and it's okay, you know, and this is a new season and a new chapter in my life. And like, I have to come to terms with that, and I have to be accepting of that. And nobody likes change. Clearly, look at 2020. But but it's like, it's important, right? Like change is where the growth happens. Change is where our healing happens. Change is where expansion happens. And so that's what I've been learning. And so the more I learn that, the more I feel called to share. And sometimes it's really hard to share. And sometimes I honestly shut down and I just kind of post whatever for a few weeks because I can't get the words out. But as soon as something starts to flow or something comes on my heart, that's when I just start, you know, just letting it all go. And then it kind of just flows and I'm super emotional. And but it's me, you know, and it's just me telling my story. And so that's really how the whole motherhood thing became a huge part of my blog and my social and now my career, which honestly, like I'm so grateful for, because if you had told me a few years ago that motherhood was going to be in part of my brand and who I am and everything, I'd be like, what, So I didn't even know if I wanted to have a baby, a few years ago. I mean, I didn't even think I'd be a good mom. I mean, I told my husband that, like, he always wanted a family, and he always told me, we're going to do it and this and that. And I was like, yeah, okay, more time, and I'm so grateful that I, actually went for it, and I'm in the place I'm in now because I love my
With a
girl.
TP in the back.
Yeah,
with the
I have a
TV.
great background.
You wouldn't have it. You wouldn't have it. That
Right.
great background. Oh.
Right. It's wild. But when you think back to that person you were a few years ago, you don't see that, right? Like, none of us do. No matter what you're going through, you don't see what's coming. You just stay in tunnel vision of like what's in front of you. And that's the whole like rejecting of change, And so once I finally kind of went through like my own rebirth after having, Amelia, my firstborn, it was like, whoa, okay, I'm not the same Ali, but I'm a different version of Ali. And now I'm actually like even, in my opinion, a better version of Ali, and I can show up differently and show up for myself more. And so it's created this amazing, community around me.
Yeah.
I want to piggyback on what you said about not knowing what the future will hold.
Yeah.
Let's go all the way back to you starting at Target. How did you get to where you are now? I mean, where you're dressing celebrities and you're, decking out the red carpet. How do you go from working at Target to this?
Well, first off, I always say Target. I love Target. I can't say enough good things. I see you have your red on. I can't say enough good things about them. Mine is, I always tell them, I'm like, can we change up the uniform in red and khaki? It's so boring. But I love working for them. So long story short, I went to college and I did an internship with them. And they asked me to intern being like an executive to their team in the internship field of learning all the different, logistics, soft lines, fashion, electronics, hard lines, all these different terminologies, in their business, and learning the different parts of the floor and working on it and merchandising and all that. So I did that as an internship to get, a job and to learn and just to kind of, throw myself in there. I didn't know what I wanted to do in fashion. I just knew I studied fashion. And I just wanted anything in fashion at that point. And so when they came with a, hey, we want you to intern and it's paid and it's, this and that, it was like, oh, hey, sign me up. My first job at a, basically like out of school, still in school, like let me.
It's paid and in the field that I studied, done.
Exactly, right? And it's somewhat fashion, like done. What do I do? So it was like, okay, get yourself some cute red and khaki, which by the way, I have to share was like hilarious because I like went out and like was like trying to find the cutest like red dresses with like cute, khaki Mary Jane shoes because you had to have, closed toe and all these things. And I remember when I showed up for like my first week of orientation and they were like, wow, this is the most like fashionable we've ever seen red and khaki. I was like, but I was like so excited and I wanted to like style myself, appropriately, but I didn't want to just wear like a boring, plain little red t-shirt and, khakis like most of the Target members did. So it was like really funny because I like, really stepped up my Target game. But so anyways, so I started working for them and I did a really great job with them. And they offered me an actual executive position with them to move over and learn from their whole corporate field and become an actual like head manager and open up one of their flagship stores right after school, which was like massive because I basically wasn't even fully graduated yet. I was still finishing my last few classes. I'm like not even 21. I'm getting a huge salary to help open a store. Like it was like, whoa, it was huge. And so working with them and working with like those big league people was massive, like game changing my career. I mean, their training, like the way they do business, the way they teach you, like, even though it obviously wasn't what I'm doing now, all that business, all of that, growth, like all the learning and the development, it taught me so much when it came to relationships, when it came to planning, when it came to having to be with the big dogs, like, all these different things. It showed me how to handle all that and like what to do, and navigate it. And so fast forward after doing a couple years with them and doing a really great job running their store, I realized that retail really wasn't for me, even though I was loving Target. And so I sat my bosses down and I said, hey, I want to do something more like in the corporate field with like design or something. Like, I don't know, but I want to be more in it than just like, doing the retail side of things. And they were like, all right, well, we can put you in front of corporate. So I was actually offered to work for them in, which I hate to say, but I turned down because I didn't want to go to Minnesota. Being honest. It's too cold. I didn't want to go. I actually went, and when my dad and I got off the plane, they announced and told us that we had to make sure we were covered because we had like a -10 wind chill, and that was enough for me. It was like, okay, New York was cold enough. I'm originally from New York. I've lived in California now for over a decade, but I'm originally from New York. New York was cold enough. It was like, no, I'm good. Thank you. So I said my goodbyes, and I ended up, looking for jobs again. And I looked around corporate, and everybody would say to me, oh, you're overqualified. You have all these things that, head manager and this and that. And I'm like, okay, but I don't have any, corporate experience, and I want to get in there. Everyone was saying no to me. And it was like so frustrating because I'm like, well, so I'm too good at what I'm doing, but I can't get an entry level job. Like it was very frustrating. And I finally had to like put my ego aside and realize, like, if I'm going to get into the corporate field and do design and product development, all the things I wanted to learn, I had to literally not only take a massive, pay cut, but I had to start at the bottom because I didn't know anything about all those things. Even though I had some training from Target, it wasn't equaling what they wanted in the corporate world. So, I finally like get someone to take me seriously and sit down and interview. And I met with a company called Fragments. They ended up bringing me on. They were a private label jewelry company in New York City for like 30 years up until a few years ago. And so I helped with product development, shipping, all the things as an assistant, just to learn the business and to be able to understand like how design worked, how product development worked, how you source, how you do this, how you do that. And so I worked for them for almost 2 years. We worked with like Aeropostale, Banana Republic, Neiman Marcus, Saks, like all the different names that most people know. And after doing that, I ended up going to Coach because then I actually had a resume that showed I knew what I was doing. And so I went to Coach. I designed handbags for them and accessories for them, and was part of their non-CC team, which was like this team 2 creative team that was all about like Coach trying a new brand of not having the CCs. So I got to be part of this really cool creative space and do that. And then the stock market crashed in New York, and it was intense, and jobs were just dropping. And my job was like, oh, especially because we were kind of like the creative, testing team. So they let go of our positions, and I didn't have a job. And I started thinking to myself, like, wow, I finally got something I enjoy, and I'm finally doing like this design work and things that I want to learn. What am I going to do? Like, and so that made me start thinking like, okay, what would I want to do if I wasn't doing this? And it kind of opened up some opportunity for me to actually explore and say, what else is there in fashion that I can do? Now, styling wasn't really a term at that point. Rachel Zoe hadn't really like popped off yet. Like the styling world wasn't really fully known. So I just knew more about like shoppers and like that side of fashion. So I started asking around like, hey, if you want to actually like dress people, like, how do you even get into that? Like, how does that work? And to be honest, I was lucky I had some family that worked in the industry. So I did reach out to them and I said, how do I even like get into this or check this out? And they were like, well, you probably want to get into like, movies or TV, and you have to find a project and, assist in this and that. So I started just interning all over again, and not paid, and just started, doing what I needed to do to get experience. So I worked with like Jessica Simpson, Nick Lachey back in the day when they were an item, dating myself, and like worked on their team and interned with them. And I worked on like one of Mariah Carey's projects and just started like doing whatever I needed to do to get the groundwork to learn that side of things. Because again, I had design and fashion experience, I had retail experience, but I didn't have any of that experience. So I had to start all over again, start interning. And then I was really lucky that my family introduced me to a few different people. I was able to get an actual internship with Oliver Stone and ended up becoming his production assistant.
Wow.
Yeah, he's amazing. And insane. And he knows I say that. And he, his team, I interviewed with them, and they basically told me like, hey, we just need someone to be our bitch, basically. I mean, it was basically, basically it was like, can you do coffee? Can you do donuts? Can you take an order? Great. That's what we need, So I was like, okay, and obviously it wasn't what I wanted to do, but I just wanted to get my foot in the door with learning that side of things. I didn't even know like what that even was. And so I started doing coffee and donuts and just running around, cutting up scripts for them, whatever they needed. And after a few months, Oliver and his team turned to me and said, "You're doing a really great job. We know you want to learn more about the fashion and like costume. We're going to have you help the costume department." And I started working with Ella Marajnik, who's a super famous costume designer, and getting to kind of be like her bitch, doing like feeding her cat and helping pack her suitcases and, doing all of those things. But again, after a lot of hard work, she let me start going to the stores with her and the showrooms and helping pick up clothes and, finding things that she needed and getting to be in the trailers with the actors. And that's when I started seeing like, wow, this is really something I'm enjoying. And this was costume, this wasn't really styling, but it was still close to. And I was like, wow, I really am enjoying this. I really like this. And so from there on, I just started taking any project I could that was anything to do with costume assisting, just to get my resume and to build up my jobs, and bounced around. And after doing quite a few jobs, I got asked to go to Atlanta to work on Big Mama's house and work with Martin Lawrence's team. And I went there for the summer, and I met the major costume team was from Los Angeles, and we clicked immediately, and they started talking to me, and they were like, "So what are you doing? Like, what's your career, goals and everything?" They were amazing. And I said, I don't exactly know, but I know I want to be in this, but I think I still want to be more in like the trending. And I've seen styling is kind of, this and that. And they were like, "Well, you should be in LA." And I was like, "Well, I'm from New York, and I've been there, and and they were like, "No, you really should like go to Los Angeles." And so they offered me a position to go with them and help me get myself going, and basically dedicate like a year of work to them and work on their projects. But they would help me like get in a costume union and get my hours and help set me up essentially in my career.
That's incredible.
Right? How do you say no to that? That's like, you gotta just seize the opportunity, right? So I did. I came back from, my husband now, who was my boyfriend at the time, Justin, came to visit me in Atlanta, and we were dating for maybe like a little over under a year. And I turned to him and I said, "I want to go to LA. I want to move to LA." And he was like, "What?" He'd never been like even to California in his life. And I was like, "Yeah, I want to go. Like, I have this opportunity and I want to, just try it. And I want to go even for a year, and then I can come back." And he was like, he's amazing. And he was like, "All right, I'll go with you." And we packed our bags and out to Los Angeles we went almost 10 and a half years ago now, and been here, ever since. And so once, I got here, I worked for them, obviously, did my thing. And then once they kind of like, set me free, so to say, I was able to start like really exploring what styling was. I realized costume wasn't what I wanted. And once again, even though I had costume experience, I didn't have styling experience. So I had to intern all over again for stylists in Los Angeles. And I interned for like Monica Rose and the Kardashians back when they worked with her, and Renault Padora for Kanye West Throne Tour, and, Emma Roberts stylist, and many, many known stylists, and just interned for them just to get experience. And eventually again,
it's interesting that even though you had these connections, you couldn't skip the beginning steps. You still had to learn it from the ground up.
You still got to do it from the ground up. And I think it's important to share that, because I think a lot of people look at other people's lives and go like, "Oh, well, I can just do that and I can just skip around." And that's just not the case. It's like, there really isn't shortcuts. Like, and if you take them, you're going to fall. Like, you really have to take the steps. I think it comes to anything in business, in my opinion, like to really have it, succeed and really have it work out. I mean, there's a reason why there's a ladder per se, and so I, climbed that ladder, and I was really lucky that I worked with, incredible people that kept setting me up with opportunities. That was one thing, no matter what project I worked on, even if I didn't have the experience, because I made those relationships, because I networked, because I had a good, attitude, I was constantly getting called to go do this, constantly getting called to go work on that. So I built up my resume to be able to put myself in a position that once I finally really got myself in the styling door, it was only a matter of time. Then I started getting asked to style my own people. But to be honest, that took time.
Lesson in that.
That is a very,
right? I mean,
it's a very cool lesson that you said, like, you had like a really nice corporate job, and then you started all over at the bottom, and then you just kept starting over at the bottom, which kind of shows that you have some humility and some drive, because you're not like, "Hey, I was getting paid this and I need to not be an intern." You were like,
Right.
hey,
But I had those moments. I mean, trust me, I had those moments where I was like, I'm making almost $100,000 as a young age, you know, as a manager. And it was like, I'm going to go do what and make 35, like what, you know, it was like, I really had to check my ego and say like, but I'm not passionate about this. I'm not happy internally, even though I'm making really good money and I'm doing well for on paper. I wasn't happy and I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. So I had to look at my life and say, okay, what can I do to change that? You know, and it wasn't an easy decision. And especially when I was first, you know, making like nothing, it was like, oh my gosh, what did I do? I threw away, you know, this huge paycheck and all this security and this and that, especially because this world is freelance. I mean, I was on a, you know, consistent paycheck. I knew what I was getting paid, you know, every week, you know, but the drive, the passion, the fuel that I feel like the actual like igniting in my soul, that's a different story.
We love that you start over.
And I was thinking like how many times people ask us why on earth you left your because we worked in the school system. She was a sign language interpreter and I did sign language in Braille. And they're like, you left that check to go write books.
And not only books, but poetry.
Not
poetry.
And I'm like,
I love poetry.
Better job, and you're like, hey, this is what I want to do, and this is what I'm going to do. So I like to have a segment called well known as narcissism.
Oh my goodness. I mean, we really need like music to it too. We need to be like, like bells, like ding 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 ding.
And now a well-known moment.
Well, for my well-known narcissism question today is, as someone who's just getting into fashion designing, what advice would you give them and or us? Because we just made our clothing line and it sucks, but you know.
Wow, congrats. Well, first of all, you went ahead and did it. So like kudos to you.
That's huge. And we did it off of titles of our poems. So that's really funny. I
like it. I like it. There's a story. It's a story. So I would say first off, you know, what I was saying before, I was just even my own career, like the networking, the relationships. Like I feel like people downplay that so much. Like we can learn so much from other people if we just check our ego, like, and just say like, okay, you know something that like I don't know, and I can learn this, and I know something you don't know, and you can learn this, and just being open to learning, like that has made a huge difference in my career of just even having other stylists even say to me like, hey, you know, I know you normally work with so-and-so, but like I have this designer and like, you know, I'm not working with them right now and they like your style. So would you want to work with them? And just being able to say like, okay, maybe I didn't source and find them, but like, why wouldn't I take that resource that's in front of me? Like they're showing me it. It's something that actually could help my career, you know? And so I had to have those moments too, where it was like, I couldn't always be the one that was like, always, you know, the one thinking of this or deciding this. Like, it's okay that you have help. It's okay that you know, use your network to help you, to build you, because then at some point, hopefully you're going to do the same for them or, you know, whatever it may be. So first to me, it's always like appreciating your community and your network and really tapping into that, because no matter what you're doing, it's going to help you grow in what you're doing. Also having some kind of like why, which it sounds like you guys do behind it. The fact that you're like, you know, it has our poetry, it has this, has that, like, what's your why? What's the reason you really want to do it? So that not only when you're putting it out there and you really believe in it, but others believe in it too, because there's an actual story to it. I think a lot of times people are just like, and myself too, are like, I'll just create just to create. And then you wonder like why things sit or something doesn't come to fruition. And it's like, you blame everything else around you. I do too. And it's like, okay, but when you sit back and actually take yourself out of that and look at it, you're like, oh, because there really wasn't an actual like purpose behind it or an actual mission. It was just whatever. And I believe the universe like truly rewards when you have that real like, why? Like, what is your purpose? Why are you doing this? And not just for yourself, not just for, you know, to excel in this or to do that, because it's helping someone or it's giving someone confidence or it's doing this or it's doing that. And you're, you know, and then the law of attraction, like you're putting that out and then you receive it back. So I think having that why, having, you know, that your mission statement, whatever it may be that, you know, goes along with your line is so just as important as the actual designs and what you're creating. And then I would say also, you know, just really, in the creative sense, like really having an idea of like what makes you different, what makes you unique, that makes this line stand out. Because obviously there's fashion everywhere, but like what makes this unique to you? And like, why would your audience want to be, into that and be driven to that, and only you can answer that question. It's like the same thing I say to people when I do my first style consult before we do anything else. It's like I sit down with them and I'm like, okay, so let's talk about like why you think you need a stylist and like why you want this session right now. And a lot of times people sit there and go like and I'm like, no, like this is for you. So like what, like why do you want this? And then the next question is like, once like why do you want this, it's like, okay, with styling, I'm like, what are 3 words that describe you when it comes to your style? Like, is it classy? Is it boho? Is it dramatic? Like, what is it? Because those things are also going to point you in the right direction of knowing of what you're putting out there as far as marketing, is what you're sharing, your own brand, like all of it is all, kind of encompassed into one when you actually break it down.
Absolutely. Wow. So I guess we have like, we
have plenty of advice.
Plenty of advice. And now we have to ask them.
I actually wrote notes.
We wrote notes.
I love it.
It's amazing. We wrote notes. Okay, anyway. I'm back.
Oh my goodness.
So I guess we have to ask the last question because we have taken a lot of your time and it was such a great interview. We love it so much. But where can people find out more about you? Read your blog, which is really fun.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. You guys are a lot of fun. I love the energy. I think it's so much fun when shows have like just real banter and back and forth and just the realness. I think especially right now, we all need more of that. So thank you. And you can find me at Levine Design on all social, ALILEVINE Design, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, wherever you find, your social platforms, you'll find me. I'm getting ready to launch my YouTube channel again, so stay tuned for that. I've been getting asked for that consistently, so I am working on it. My blog, allylevine.com, like I said, is rebranding, and I'm very excited. I'll have a whole new logo and way of things being set up, and even more exciting content for everyone, from fashion to lifestyle, motherhood, and everything in between. My podcast, Everything with Ali Levine, anywhere you listen to a podcast, you can listen to my podcast. And yeah, and please, if you connected or resonated from this episode, let me know and shout these beautiful ladies out and, send me a message. I love to connect with all new people in my community. And that's what we're all here for, right? Like, I really feel like 2020 has been such a teaching time for so many. And I think that as much as it has been very hard for all of us, not gonna lie, yesterday was I had a very emotional moment, but I have to remind myself that there's a lot of lessons in this time. As Tanya was saying, there's, a lot of expansion, there's a lot of growth, there's a lot of change. And sometimes it's not easy, but it really is usually for the better good for all of us. And so just keep doing what you're doing. We've all got this and we're all here for each other.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Tanya, where can people find out more about you?
I am across social media at Ms. Tanya Todd, and my website is www.mstanyatodd.com.
Thank you so much, Tanya. We love for you to say your website.
Exactly.
All right. And you can find out everything your ladies are doing, including some more of these episodes, on www.andwesaw.com. While you're there, take a moment, go to the ladies tab. Why?
Because you want to say ladies podcast because you missed it.
Yeah,
you missed it.
I did. So ladies tab, go down the middle and see the charities that we proudly support. Maybe you can support them too. And if you can't support them, that's okay. Maybe you can just add them on social media and say thank you so much for doing this wonderful work in the world. We really appreciate it. And y'all, we just decided that we are not coming up with a ladies tale thing. Well, maybe I've decided. Winona's still on the fence about it, but I'm probably going to be like motion carried and it's going to happen. I'm going to motion carry myself, right? Motion carried. So yeah, so we're going to just wrap it up with how we do the Women's Cave one. Yeah, so remember y'all, that wisdom is all around you if
you're open to feminism and acceptance. So peace and love, you guys, from Winona and Jade.
Bye-bye. Oh yeah, thanks for listening.